All right, on this episode of Bare Knuckle Bowker, very excited to talk to an individual who has been a bare knuckle boxer for multiple high level promotions at this point. Also, a motivational speaker and has a lot of exciting things to address in terms of havoc mindset and just quite the life story in general. Very happy to have Shane Fichter on Bare Knuckle Bowker today. And yeah, thanks so much for making the time to talk about a few things today, Shane. Much appreciated, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's funny. My whole life I've had people mess that last name up, but it's all good though. It's Fichter. So like the H is kind of like silent. It's a German last name, so it's supposed to be like Fichter. You're supposed to like spit all over yourself and stuff. But yeah, man, I'm glad to be here. Just had a pretty big bout out in New York with BKB and broke my orbital. Have a couple scars here, but it's healing up real nice. So yeah, been doing good.
Yeah, for sure. And I got a hard to pronounce last name too, so I apologize about that. Shane Fichter, right?
It's all
Fixture.
good.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all
yeah.
good, bro. Yeah, when I fought for King of Sparta, they spelled it all wrong and everything. It's all good. It's something I've been used to for a long time. So
But I did see that post, and this was kind of how we initially, I guess, got connected. I believe it was either the BKB account specifically, or maybe even Don Pavia, who's with BKB. But it was addressing the fact that you want to get on some podcasts and talking about this great story you want to tell. I guess within that, like, what aspects of this story are you hoping to really touch on and get out there? It seems oriented to like mindset, motivation, self development, etc.
yeah. I mean, honestly, man, I'd say that like fighting and self-development saved my life. And I like to get out there, tell my story. I was like, you know what? I'm healing right now, so it'd be a good time to talk about who I am, where I'm from. I do I do some motivational speaking at some schools and stuff like that, just kind of telling my story. I've came from a pretty rough childhood. My mom was a drug addict, and my father committed suicide when I was 13. And that's kind of how I started getting into my own bullshit and, fighting on the streets. I ended up wrestling in high school and doing a little bit of jujitsu. And my buddy ended up having his dad built a cage in his backyard. So we started training MMA in the backyard, and he showed us some stuff. But besides that, my whole past was pretty fast money, drugs, and I ended up turning my life around from hitting rock bottom. Because by the time I was 16, I started using opiate painkillers. By the time I was 25, I started injecting IV and shooting up. And by the time I was 28, man, I had multiple overdoses. Even went to the desperation of robbing a guy at gunpoint, and ended up getting locked up and going to treatment. And that rock bottom is kind of what kind of woke me the fuck up. I didn't have anybody else to turn to. I'd burned every bridge, and I was pretty much a desperate junkie, and went through like a 35-day withdrawal, and it just kind of woke me the hell up. So like in jail, I started working out, shadow boxing, reading books, just trying to become a different mindset, become a different person, right? Like I'm a strong believer that where we are in our life, our success, the people we talk to, our relationships is all deeply tied to our self worth. That story that we're telling ourselves in our head about us and the world around us. And for a long time, my story was fucked up. I'm just a drug addict like my mom. I'm a drug addict myself. I'm a kid from the ghetto, and I'm never going to escape that past. And after going through jail and treatment and everything, I ended up going to some MMA fights after I got out, and watched a couple MMA fights that the Grindhouse was fighting. That's actually the gym that I trained for. And I just remembered how much I loved doing jiu-jitsu and wrestling as a kid. And so the next day I went into the Grindhouse and met Will Grunhauser. He became like my mentor, took me under his wing. And I found that, and this is, I guess, why I want to tell the story, is because there's a lot of people out there that struggle, had a hard past, struggle from addiction. They struggle from these limiting beliefs. But the most amazing thing that I learned was this rough life that I had and this rough childhood I had gave me a lot of skills and talents and attributes that a lot of these other fighters didn't have. A lot of these guys that have been training their whole life, and I didn't start training until I was 28, they didn't have the same resilience. They didn't say like have that same. If you saw my last fight, like one of those first blows broke my orbital, but I get up, you know what I mean? And I don't stop coming. And that's something I think that came from my past. So the message is, like for a lot of people out there that might feel like they're less than, if they actually comb through the things that are happening in their life, they can probably find a lot of skills and talent and resilience within that story. You know what I mean?
And I guess even to one of your prior points about like who you surround yourself with, and I guess in general what you surround yourself with informing your own goals, aspirations, etc. Like I thought it was cool seeing that you had BKFC champion Kai Stewart as part of, everything, just hearing his story, motivation Monday and tapping into that havoc mindset there, just in the sense of it seems like you have a defined goal of becoming a bare knuckle champion through this process. So it makes sense why you would chop it up with, a demonstrably successful BKFC
Yeah.
champion like him.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, Kai Stewart comes to our gym and trains. Actually, I met Kai. He was real young. We talk about it actually in that Motivation Monday. I was fighting MMA and he was like 17, dude. And he's fighting MMA and he was an amateur. And he was like, dude, how do I get sponsors? Because that's kind of one thing I'm good at promoting businesses. So, and I just kind of laid it out for him. And he remembered to this day what I said to him. But I said, you need to walk into these places just sure that you're going to make it and that you know that you won't stop until you do make it and that they want their logo on your shorts for when you do make it. And I said, make them believe that you will climb through glass to get there. And so, yeah, we've just kind of stayed connected this whole time. He's a Montana boy. We've got a lot of really heavy hitters and badasses coming out of Montana right now. My training partner is Corey Willis. I don't know if you've seen who he is. He just beat Zach Calamalis, and he's got some big news coming up. I can't really talk about it right now, but he's a contender. He's a heavyweight contender in BKFC. And I'm actually the first guy I think out of Montana to venture over into BKB, but I really just love that trigon. I've been training I've been putting a rope up in my ring in our ring here at the Grindhouse and trying to get used to that triangle. And I also just like the way they take care of their fighters, and how they keep them active. Like that's what I like to see. So
And I guess just to even get a certain level of, clarification on certain things. And I guess because BKFC, in my experience, generally kind of goes with like the one fight contracts more often than not. And it also, I
yeah,
guess, seems kind of commonplace in bare knuckle in general. Like, I guess just what happened with that whole experience. Like, obviously, you're in a great promotion with BKB, and you talk about the Trigon and like how
yeah.
well they treat fighters. And that's a pretty common sentiment I do hear. But I guess what happened with the BKFC situation and getting to BKB, like what does that interim period look like? So you got that win in May at BKFC 74 and, first round KO and whatnot. Like what was the, I guess, time period like between the BKFC fight and I guess just what ultimately led you to BKB?
So I had actually, I was told by Nate that he wanted me on the Sturgis card, and so we kind of started getting prepared for that. And I was supposed to be on that card. Like I think I was like one of the first guys after that fight that he said we want to see Shane and Sturgis, and I was supposed to fight Mike Jones, and then it kind of just like drifted apart. Like nobody knew really where it went or what happened. And I ended up not on the card. I know that they ended up having some like cancellations that they had to make. Due to because it's just the budget, I guess. I guess one of the things I didn't understand about Sturgis was that they only sell a little circle of VIP and then everybody else gets to kind of just watch the fights for free. So that made it a little bit more understandable where I think that they had to like, save on budget because they had some big names on that card. And then when we had talked to them, they just were like, kind of like, well, we don't know what's even going on in the next 45 days. So we don't know when you're going to fight next. And we know a lot of other fighters that have had that hard situation when it comes to BKFC because you just got so many big names that are signing up in there every day. It's hard to keep them kind of consistent. Well, then Mel just kind of reached out to me from BKB and was like, "Hey, man, like if you're interested in doing, a fight for us in New York, we would gladly give you a 4-fight contract." And I was like, you know what? Let's do it because I'm 40 years old, man. So I would definitely just say like I can't be sitting around long. You know what I mean? Like I can't be waiting around too long. So I want to get active. I want to get in there, and I want to like put these fights on the table, um, and kind of the way I've always looked at it, because I didn't start fighting until I was 28. I didn't really start hitting my stride until I was about 33, 34. Because I kind of always knew MMA for me was a stepping stone. Like this was my way to inspire, build my personal brand so that I can get my message out there, talk to the people. And I think that that's kind of like my passion and my purpose on earth is to try to inspire others. I feel like the cards were stacked against me my whole life, and that just makes more of a story. So I love helping people change their mindset. I love helping people see what they're actually capable of. Because if you were to look at me 10 years ago, there's no way that you would think that I would be doing what I've done in my life. After I got out of treatment and started fighting MMA, I did a lot in the sport in a very short period of time because I was just I'd take the risks. I would come in like a bat out of hell, like for example, I think I had my first fight within 5 months of training. I mean, I had a little bit of background in this in fighting and training and some fights on the streets and stuff, stupid stuff like that. But 4 months into training, I'm sparring with Tyler Vogel, and I don't know if you remember who that is, but he was a pro that used to train at our gym. He was one of the first guys to fight BKFC. Fought
Mm-hmm.
Phil. Yeah. He fought Bostwick. Yeah, he fought Bostwick. And so I'm sparring with Tyler Vogel, and I'm an 0-0 amateur. Dude, been training for like 4 months, but he's the 185er that was in here. We became training partners, and I'm not gonna like shy away. I want to train with the best guys so that I become the best. And we're sparring one day, and he's literally trying to hit me with everything he has with 4-ounce gloves on. And I'm just coming forward and coming forward and coming forward. And Will, our coach, walks up and is like, "Hey, hey, 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 you guys take it fucking easy." And I'm like, sorry, sorry, sorry. He's like, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Tyler. He's the pro here. And he's like, Tyler, he's an 0-0 amateur, dude. Like, take it easy. And I said sorry again. And Will was like, you don't need to be sorry. Whenever you're ready to fight, you just let me know you're ready to fight. And I'm like, what, dude? These guys have been training forever. And he's like, yeah, but you can't train that. You know what I mean? Like that ability to just keep coming forward. Like, you could be the best technical fighter in the world, man. But if you can't take shots and come forward, like how far are you going to make it? So
And it's interesting you mentioned the name Tyler Vogel because that instantly like resonates as someone to me, just as someone who's been covering bare knuckle for quite a few years now and everything like that. Like he just has so much connectivity to, I guess, aspects of the bare knuckle world. Like, I mean, he fought Ian Heinisch in MMA, who, I mean, it's not quite straight ahead conventional bare knuckle, but that BKFC Ice Wars property. He's the president of that outfit. And he also has an MMA win over Josh Dyer, who has that big Lorenzo Hunt rematch for his BKFC light heavyweight title coming up next, like his being Dyer's and
oh,
whatnot.
dude,
So yeah, love to see all that.
love Dyer. Yeah, I love Josh Dyer, dude. Because so I in Salt Lake, I was on the same card as him. One of the coolest guys I think I've ever met in my life. And that dude's hands are huge. And I think I trained with Heichman a little bit. So is that how you pronounce it? Heinzman, right?
Heinisch, Ian Heinisch, yeah.
Heinisch, yeah. So I used to go down to Denver and train down there. We were an affiliate with Bang Muay Thai, so I'd go down there, train with Dwayne Ludwig, but then I would go over to Easton's and spar, and I would go over to Factory X and spar. And I know he's at one of those gyms, right? Like, didn't he train out of Denver?
I believe he did, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I trained with him somewhere at one of those gyms. But yeah, man, and that's kind of too what I think. Back when Montana didn't have much bodies up here, I would go down to Denver. I'd go down to Florida. So I've trained with some of the best guys in the world: Gilbert Burns, Robbie Lawler. I went over to Thailand. I trained in Thailand for 28 days at Sit Mochai, and when you go back to surround yourself with who you want to be, like I think that that's kind of one of my strong suits is I'm really good at networking. I'm really good at bringing people together, and I'm really good at surrounding myself with those good relationships. what I was getting to, honestly, like, is even outside of fighting, I think that I've used fighting and fighting mentality and kind of the message that I bring that I'm kind of trying to pump out there, is that if I look at who I am as a person and the hard things that have happened to me, I can find my skills and my talents and my traits within those. Because when I went down to Florida, so I don't know if you know this, but I retired at 34 too. So I got in the MMA game, hit it really hard, overtrained, got rhabdo, had some pretty hardcore fights where I was like choked unconscious. I fought Billy Henderson and we had like a slugfest. And I ended up going out to Fort Lauderdale, Florida to train at Sanford MMA.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just had a fight 6 weeks prior to that. And that wasn't even really on my mind, but I had taken like 6 elbows to the head. Well, then I'm out in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Me and my old training partner, Kobe Jeffers, um, ended up getting invited out there to try out for Henry Hoof's team, with like Gilbert Burns, Robbie Lawler, a lot of those big names. And we kind of, made it onto the team after 2 weeks of training there. And I'm sparring with Takeshi Sato, who's I'm sure you know who that is. He's a UFC vet.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's a Japanese just ninja. And I kept running this hop switch, walk into a left hand, and he barely touched me. But I ended up going stiff as a board, was out for like a minute and a half, gapped out the whole day, started walking around the gym looking for my cell phone, just asking the same question over and over again for like 3 hours. Really spooked a lot of the coaches around there, spooked myself, spooked my buddy. And so I ended up retiring. And what they were all spooked about, though, was like how easily I got knocked out. Right. And I ended up later, a couple years later, getting a scan done. Me and the doctor connected the dots, found out that it was a double concussion from that previous fight, is why I got knocked out so easy. So I ended up making my return back into MMA about 3 years ago. And then and then like after I made that retirement, I ended up starting a couple businesses. The Patch Guy, I started the kava bars here out in Montana, and then kind of lost one of those businesses. And my mentals, I was like, the only thing I know how to do is go into fight camp. So I just went into fight camp, not really expecting to fight. I just needed to get my mindset right, and ended up because we've had a few guys fight on the BKFC card. I had a couple of the guys that worked for BKFC when they were in town come into my kava bar. So once they saw me training, they were like, "Hey man, what are you doing? Like, you get one pro win, we'll get you a fight on the BKFC." And I'm like, "Sweet." So did one for Fusion, did one for BKFC, and now I've done one for BKB. But I'm ready to get back in there.
And I guess what does that look like for you? Like, is there a certain like defined timeline on when that could transpire? Like, is there like a medical suspension to consider
Yeah.
in that, or like what's the I guess ideal return timeline, or like what you would project to get back into the mighty Trigon? I guess.
So it would be about 6 weeks before I could even spar. So the way I would look at it is going to probably be at least another 2 or 3 months. I think that was what three weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'll do is I've been shadowboxing every day. I've been training every day, making my money on the side, doing clients because I also coach clients with personal training and pads, and just staying healthy, shadowboxing, hitting the bag, do some pads with my striking coach, Drew McManus, and wait, and then once that 6 weeks hits, start talking to the matchmaker. And so, yeah, I think probably about 2 or 3 months. That Saeed, man, that guy's a beast. We didn't know much about him. And, I can almost guarantee that guy's going to get a belt, especially if he stays in the 185 class. He's such a big 185er. That dude was an easy 220 pounds when we got back in that ring, dude. It was crazy. But he's really good, too.
Yeah, absolutely. A demonstrably talented fighter. And I did want to touch on this piece as well, because you mentioned the King of Sparta tournament a bit earlier. And I love that concept. And for anyone who's not privy to what that is, multiple
Yeah.
fights in one evening under multiple fighting disciplines. And I guess the specific piece I wanted to touch on within that, because you won your boxing fight on March 23rd, 2019, and then fought LT Nelson later on in the
Yes, I
night in a
did.
kickboxing set of rules. And stuff like that. And just LT just doing such great things in BKB. What are your thoughts on his upcoming rematch with Barry Jones in November at
Dude,
BKB 48?
Dude, LT is a beast, man. I'm a big fan. Honestly, I'm a big fan. I love his style. And one thing I've noticed about a lot of the guys with his degree of fighting, like even like Tyler Goodjohn, is they're very shelled like this. And that's something I think I need to learn how to do a little more of after my last fight, you know? They stay in this like little protection here. But dude, yeah, I love LT Nelson's rise. I love that he's the first dude to ever do Lithway in America. Like that's so kick ass. And I've been following his whole story. Yeah, I fought him in the King of Sparta. It was an interesting thing. So I didn't think I was fighting him yet because I knew it was going to be a bruiser, and he had Justin Gaethje like right there, like in his corner, hovering around his corner. So like right away he's in my head, you know. And then we get in there, and I just got back from Thailand, so I landed a couple of shots. So I kind of like calmed down and was like, all right, I belong here. And then he just turned me, dude, and just put his knee through my body, through my liver, and just completely paralyzed me. But I'm really excited about for this next fight. I just I have a hard time seeing anybody beat him, man. I just he can take shots, he gives shots. Yeah, he's a bruiser, dude.
Yeah, for sure, man. Such an incredible fighter. And I mean, who knows how things could pan out. Maybe you'll throw down with him again in a bare knuckle contest. That would be
Yeah,
something.
maybe. That'd be sweet, dude. That would be sweet. Yeah. I think that is the plan too, is to probably go down to 175. I'm tossing it back and forth. Like whether I stay at 185, whether I go back to 175. I'm not really sure yet. But if they're getting as big as Saeed is at 185, then I'm probably gonna go down to 175. So, but yeah, I'm pretty stoked because when we first looked at the weight divisions of BKFC and BKB, we were actually kind of excited about that 175. So back in my MMA days, and even that fight against LT Nelson, I'd cut down to 170. Um, but I started at 185. But we always felt like 170 was a little too far because I mean, I would probably walk around at 196 to 200, 202 pounds, but 185 just wasn't quite enough. You know what I mean? Because once I get into camp, I start leaning down to 196, 195. So then by the time I do that 185 cut and I get back in there, I'm only at 196, you know? So there's a lot of guys making them big cuts.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that would be an interesting move to navigate for sure. And I guess just one of the last things I wanted to touch on, Shane, because it seems like the havoc mindset is, as we've kind of touched on, understandably a big part of what you want to do. And ultimately, your fighting endeavors are to kind of drive that more inspirational and motivational coaching oriented kind of path. I guess for people who might be curious as to what the havoc mindset is or what they could even stand to get out of it, can you, I guess, just make people who might be curious privy to that?
Yeah. So they can always go to havocmindset.com. I do one-on-one coaching. I do mindset coaching. I even do personal training and, you know, mind, body, spirit. That's what Havoc Mindset's about. It's about creating good habits in your life, and honestly altering the way that you think about yourself and the world around you, because that is deeply tied to the limits that you're going to put on yourself or the level that you'll go to. It's about improving yourself, improving your mindset, constantly becoming 1% better every day. And I love working with fighters. I've worked with a few fighters. I've worked with business owners that hit complacency, you know, and I've worked with a lot of business owners that actually get paid a lot more money than I do. But it's all about mindset. You know what I mean? So sometimes some of those guys that I work with help me out with some of the things I need, you know, help on, and I help them. But honestly, too, like I've spoken in front of businesses, so I love doing speaking events and just helping people find their purpose and helping people find what the hard things in their life have created in their life on the positive side, not just the negative side, you know? And that's kind of what my program does. I have a 12-week course. I also coach people one-on-one in Zoom, and I help them, you know, change their life and kind of get past any ceilings that have been created in their life.
Well, I love that, man. That's such a powerful thing you're endeavoring to do. And clearly, you know, doing great stuff with, and it seems like many more, leveling up instances to come and everything. And I mean,
Oh
that could
yeah.
serve as a great parting thought, even in and of itself, or insofar as that could kind of wrap it up nicely too, just encapsulating that sentiment and stuff like that. But I also figured I'd give you the floor, Shane, in case you maybe did have a final parting thought you wanted to add as we are, wrapping up here, man.
Yeah, man. Just I would say my final thought when it comes to any kind of message that I could give somebody is if you have something that you've been burning to do and you just haven't done it, you need to believe that you can do it and just start. And I'd also like to, give a shout out to all my sponsors. They're all over my social media. Give a shout out to my gym, the Grindhouse, and my coaches, Will Grunhauser and Drew McManus. I don't know if you know who Drew McManus is. Have you ever heard of the band Sat Sing?
No, I'm not familiar, admittedly. No.
Yeah, no, they're kind of like it's kind of like reggae bluegrass, but he mixes hip hop in there. They're
Oh,
touring all over the world and stuff. But he's also a striking coach here at our gym, and so he's my pad holder, and all my training partners. Shout out to all them. And if anybody wants to contact me, my Instagram is Shane Havoc Mindset, my TikTok Shane Havoc Mindset, and they can always go to havocmindset.com, like I said, and you can usually contact me there as well. Any speaking engagements they want me to come to, I'd love to come. I love getting the crowd riled up and getting them believing in themselves.
yeah, you definitely know how to get the crowd riled up in a fighting context as well as the motivational speaking piece, man. But it's been so good having you
Thanks.
on Bare Knuckle
Thank
Bowker
you.
today. Yeah, no, it's been great talking, Shane. Hopefully we can also get something going for whenever this next fight you've kind of touched on will be and whatnot. But yeah, just, really appreciate you coming on and just, yeah, super excited to see you in that mighty Trigon next. You definitely have a certain flair for bare knuckle. It seems like the sport for you. So yeah, thanks so much for
Yeah,
coming
it
on
is.
Bare Knuckle Bowker today. We'll have to get something going for whenever the next Trigon trek will be. But yeah, you have a good rest of your day. Until then, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.